You will remember a few months back when Trump came into office back in the middle of February, and Vance decided to go over to Europe and make them cry by explaining to them free speech is important, actually, you communists. And they took this very badly. I mean, one German MP actually did stand up in public and cry actual tears over it, which I enjoyed. And so Starmer... Starmer realized which way the wind was blowing. And so he went over to the United States and decided to do the honorable and decent thing and just lie through his teeth. When he was like, oh, yes, free speech in Britain. Yes, that's definitely something we have, Mr. President. We have a long, this is the exact quote. We have a long, we've had free speech for a very, very long time in the UK. And it will last for a very, very long time. Certainly, we wouldn't reach across to US citizens if we don't, and that's absolutely right. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of our history here. Does anyone think we have free speech in this country?
I don't know anyone who really does, apart from, the kind of small group of elites who want to continue with the fact that we haven't got free speech, but they pretend it's there.
I don't know if they even pretend. I saw a discussion on BBC, one panel discussion, and there was a woman from the Telegraph, I think it was, who was trying to make the argument we maybe could have free speech. And then her interlocutor was like, yeah, but we've never had free speech over here, have we? And she was like, well, no, we haven't, actually.
I've noticed this sneaky thing that Jacob Rees-Mogg does and some Tories do, which is they do this little sleight of hand where they reframe it as freedom of the press. Notice that? Wow. Yeah. Freedom of the press.
Interesting.
So it's like, well, you have free speech, as long as you're writing for The Sun or as long as you're writing for the Daily Telegraph or something like that.
I've seen them narrow it down to freedom of the parliamentarians as well. It's like, oh, great. Well, I'm so glad that 650 people in this country have free speech. But anyway, the point being is that everyone knew that Starmer was lying through his teeth come the end of February, and the Americans kept going on about this. You remember that Donald Trump made free speech one of the key parts of his trade deal with the United Kingdom. When asked about the comments, a source familiar with the trade negotiations told the Telegraph, quote, no free trade without free speech. I mean, I like the sound of that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I guess Starmer just carried on lying through his teeth. And the thing is, the Trump administration is paying attention to Britain because, of course, being nativists themselves, you can't really be an American nativist without having some kind of goodwill towards the United Kingdom, because, of course, we're the place that the Americans came from originally. And so they've been paying close attention to us for quite a while. And this is just a fascinating article that the Telegraph have provided to us, in which they list a series of the high-profile cases that the Trump administration has been paying attention to. So I thought we'd go through a few of them, just to make the point that, no, we don't have free speech. And when Starmer tells you that we do have free speech, he's lying, because he's the one who agrees with the way that the suppression should be set up. So the first one is the case of Livia Tosiki-Bolt. And this is one of the interesting things about this, is the Trump administration, being a Christian administration, is very much concerned with what they would call pro-life activism. And so this is a pro-life campaigner she is a pro-life campaigner who is being prosecuted after she held a sign outside an abortion clinic that said, here to talk if you want. Now, this I don't think is terribly controversial or provocative. But for some reason in the United Kingdom, abortion is some kind of sacred right that women have that you're not even really allowed to question. And so it's not really a hot political issue here at the moment. It's just something on the realm of 250,000 abortions happen every year. And everyone says, if Moloch demands it, I suppose. And we don't really talk about it. So those people who have been arrested for praying quietly in their heads outside of abortion clinics, the state oppression looks all the more peculiar because it's not like there's a huge crowd of people screaming that you're going to hell or something for doing this. I guess it's there by implication.
It's as simple and plain and as calm as you can get in any form of protest. It's the Martin Luther King of quiet protest over that particular view. And why is it the left can turn around and say we want peaceful protest for change, but not if you peaceful protest opposing, our shibboleth of abortion. And therefore we're going to implement a quite radical and discriminatory piece of legislation that now allows us to have a criminal act by banning you from a certain area around a building. I mean, that in itself is a breach of freedom of speech and freedom of movement.
But it's also comical when the police ask them, "Are you praying in your head?" And they say yes, and they're right, you're under arrest. Mm-hmm. And they actually have been arrested for praying in their own heads. Anyway, moving on, the next one is Adam Smith Connor, who was one of the people also convicted for praying outside of an abortion clinic. He was a 51-year-old former Army veteran. He was given 2-year conditional discharge in order to pay £9,000 for breaching a ban on protests within a legal buffer zone. J.D. Vance, of course, has taken a particular interest in this one because, again, they are actually Christians. Like, we might be an island of atheists, but they take this seriously. And if our, what is now Christian minority, seek to exercise what the Americans perceive as their free speech rights in pursuit of their religious convictions, this matters to them, even though for some reason it doesn't matter to us. Anyway, the next one is Tyler Kay. Kay was jailed for 38 months after writing an offensive anti-immigration post on X during the Southport riots. His post was very similar to Lucy Connolly's post. He said, quote, "Mass deportation now, set fire to the effing hotels full of the bastards for all I care. If that makes me a racist, so be it."
Yeah, similar to hers.
He's very similar. He pled guilty. The Northampton Crown Court sentenced him to, 38 months again. And Elon Musk signal boosted this, calling it messed up, with a post that attracted 31 million views. So, interesting.
I'd be interested to have seen what would happen if he took a trial by jury. I suspect that he would have actually gone. And this
if they
is why
just
I
pled not guilty.
I pled not guilty. Everyone should have pled not guilty to it, and everyone should have gone into the Crown Courts, and then we could have been able to have even more interesting cases to come out, because then they've got to prove the evidence on a number of cases. It would have delayed the courts. It would have created issues. And that's their legal right. Their legal right to do so. What is fascinating is how you keep hearing time and time again the duty solicitor or the solicitor at the time said, plead guilty and you'll get credit, and they got no credit.
And these are solicitors who are given by the state. Right?
Yes.
Because I think many of these people probably had no criminal records, had no legal interaction with the state in any way, didn't have a lawyer of their own, didn't know what they were doing, and they were just advised by the state-appointed lawyer, just plead guilty and you'll be fine, bro. And none of them were.
None of them were.
So anyway, moving on, we'll skip over that chap and come back to him in a minute. We have Alison Pearson, who is an award-winning Telegraph columnist. So let's talk about the freedom of the press again, shall we? She's an award-winning writer being investigated for allegedly stirring up racial hatred with a social media post made in November last year. 2 police officers called at her home at 9:40 a.m. on Remembrance Sunday to tell her that she was under investigation and invited to a voluntary interview. And so this is an ongoing case. This, of course, got a bit of a backlash because, hang on a second, isn't this one of our own? Hang on, what are you doing? You can't be investigating one of ours, part of the media class. This is meant to be a protected person, which goes to show you that there are no protected people. And the last one here that we'll cover is Darren Brady, an Army veteran, 51, who was arrested for, quote, causing anxiety, because he put up a meme of a swastika which was made up of the 4 LGBT pride flags. And so the police turned up at his house and said, quote, someone has been caused anxiety based on your social media post, which is apparently a crime now.
Yeah. And this is what Jonathan Sumption was talking about. I mean, although I disagreed with his analysis of Lucy Connolly, he did explain very clearly that the extension of the Public Order Act to allow just causing anxiety and concern. We're not. They are, and also the fact that they are so connected to the individual who makes the claim, rather than anything ostensively, factually provable. You can just say it, even if you don't feel it.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that we don't fill the courts ourselves and fill the police time ourselves with those on the Conservative side of it by saying exactly the same, day in, day out, about people like O'Brien on LBC. Let's constantly do that. Make a mockery of it.
Completely in favour of malicious compliance.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to do the, what if the other side did it type
Realised
thing.
consent.
Yeah, I agree.
But I mean, on this case, it is absurd. It's not that long ago when the left were arguing with an open face, with a kind of they were arguing straight that the likes of you, Carl, should just be allowed your free game to throw milkshake over you, or to in a more extreme case. Do you remember the whole thing? It's all right to just punch Richard Spencer in the face because you don't like what he says.
Absolutely.
Or I remember for ages over this bridge I used to drive under, there was a banner which simply just said "Hang the Tories."
Yeah.
Okay. Now look, you don't have to like the Tories.
Nobody hates the Tories more than us.
Nobody dislikes the Tories more than us. You don't have to like Carl. You don't have to like Richard Spencer. But the point is that when it comes to them, BLM was not that long ago.
No.
It's almost like they say, well, actually, actual violence is fair game for us, but speech is not fair game for you. And in all of those debates, they even frame it as if they've got a right to violence. In those cases. So yeah, this is one of those cases where there is just a ribald double standard at play in the whole debate.
And I think one of the things that's very clear to people and very clear to those in the United States, and I have to admit I was on what they call a Spaces last night in the US between 2 and 4 in the morning, so my eyes start falling asleep. It's pretty much there. But on that Spaces, the Americans were just so concerned about what was happening in here. When I talked about the need to have organizations funded, the Americans were saying, we can help. How can we help? Can we deal with this in supporting you in that? And then the question popped up. He said, you left Britain to come out to the United States for freedom. How can we? Is it possible that we can also offer you all asylum as well from your country? And I said, well, yeah. At the moment, many of us are fighting for it, but there are those who turn around to our children and say, "Don't bother staying here. Go to the United States. It's a freer place to be." And that's a shocking state of affairs when you hear that. They are concerned about us.
The stereotype on the American right at the moment is not unfounded, in that Britain is not a country that has liberty as they understand it.
Yeah.
They have a much higher bar to what freedom is than we do. And this, like you say, it's completely common. And I'm friends with lots of fairly large names on the American right, and they ask me, is it really like we're saying? It's like, yes, it's really like it's being reported. The difference, I think, and the thing that I think the American right needs to understand when they're looking at these, is that the targets are usually chosen with deliberate intention. For example, we'll go to the example of Tommy Robinson, actually, who, of course, was another very important voice in this. And notice that the Telegraph, Tommy Robinson, known for his extreme views on Muslims and his propensity to stoke racial hatred. Okay, well, tell me what they are. Like, what's the quote? I hear that he has these views, but I'm actually lacking a quote of what Tommy Robinson has said about Muslims. But anyway, the point is that he was targeted, but he didn't have to go to jail. It was to prove a point that he published his documentary Silenced on Twitter that got something like 160 million views. He wouldn't have gone to jail for this if he had not done that, but he was very firmly in the crosshairs. And essentially he goaded the establishment, say, look, you have to do this or else I'm going to get away with it. But the point being, in other cases, they're very reticent to target high profile people. They target people for who, example, would have had a few hundred views on their tweets to make examples out of the powerless. For example, they haven't come for me or you or you. They haven't come for any of us.
Not that we know that we might have non-hate crime incidents.
We doubtless do. And if they wanted to, they could. But they know that we're connected in a network of activists that have sympathetic ears all over the place. And that we will make a big deal out of these things.
Now, there is with some, what makes this confusing is that not all of these cases are the same. No. And I mean, I don't want to make apologies for the state or whatnot, but there's a difference between the silent prayer and an active court. I mean, if you've been on Twitter for any amount of time, everybody knows don't Fed post on main, right? Everybody knows that as a piece of advice. So there's probably a debate to be had about an active. Now, where it gets tricky is that leftists, I mean, I'm old enough to remember. Do you remember the Trump head? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Remember that?
Newman, is it?
With the blood dripping from it.
With the blood dripping. I mean, all of the
What is that difference?
people openly calling for the. I mean, do you remember the Trump assassination?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So again, it's one of those cases where it's kind of fair game for them to wish kind of death and violence on their opponents, but this will, land these people in jail. But there probably is a debate to be had about, do we want the country to be like absolute free speech? You're allowed, anything goes, period, or is there a line somewhere? Realistically, when it comes to,
but there's
it's the whole don't shout fire in a theatre type thing.
That's fake.
If there's not a,
It's not,
I mean, I know this
that's
is
not
you've
correct.
had
Yeah.
many times,
But that's actually not correct. You can shout fire in a crowded theatre. I don't know why. It's a persistent myth.
okay, well,
The Americans can do that.
Yeah, but even in the United States, they have limitations, and we supposedly have two main principal limitations. The first is a principle of libel, whether you commit slander or be libelous to them, and that's pretty much okay. You can't turn around, or you shouldn't be able to turn around and say someone's a paedophile without evidence of it and destroy their career, except that we have made the issue of libel and slander so difficult for the ordinary citizen to make a claim that even someone like Lawrence Fox, whose career was definitely destroyed because they called him a racist, the court would not accept what a racist was and would not define it and allow him to be called that name. So again, you have this argument by people. That part now only supports the left. And the second is the criminal side of things, where we turn around. You say you can't turn around and say, if you're standing in a street, there's that man, he's a Muslim, therefore let's go and set fire to him and burn him alive. That true is incitement. And the question that we have to balance ourselves is whether someone really on X and Twitter making a statement like Lucy Connolly or this chap that I unfortunately had not heard about is actually genuine, doing a call to arms to actually set fire to these hotels, or whether common sense says that these people are in a state of emotional trauma caused by the deaths of so many children at the hands of a mass murderer who was pretty evil in his own right, whether they really meant, let's go out and set fire to these hotels with people in it. And that is the question that a jury, I believe, should have been asked. And they should have been done rather
just
than
venting, letting off steam.
Absolutely, venting and letting off steam. Like you say sometimes when you see somebody in a pub, or you think, oh God, look, there he is. He's had 10 pints. He's going to the wind, and he starts screaming about, Ferguson being the worst manager ever.
So you know what's interesting? I read a couple of books about the death penalty a couple of years ago because I was I was interested in forming a proper opinion on the death penalty.
Yeah.
And one thing that one of these books was pointing out is that the death penalty required a unanimous decision by the jury for the judge to be able to issue it. So on paper, the law was, if you stole X amount of shillings or if you did this, that's it, death penalty. And the softening of the law was done by the juries themselves. And so the juries would essentially agree, okay, we think he is guilty of doing this, but we're not all going to unanimously agree to the death penalty. So he'll get whatever punishment in prison or flogging or whatever it is. And so you have the option of the harshest punishment in the correct times where it's needed. But because it's, as you say, like falling back on the sort of mercy of the jury, who themselves are just normal people. Yeah. And so they use their gut instinct very, very fairly, actually. And so what this actually meant is that in England, though we had something like 230 statutes that were on the books that you could get the death penalty for, you'd get something like half a dozen executions a year.
Yes.
And so instead of because what you would think there'd be hundreds and thousands of executions, but it actually very rarely happened because the juries would take into account the mitigating circumstances of the person, and that's precisely what's missing, as you're saying in this case. I
agree, and on that particular issue, I've looked at the death penalty, and like so many people, they want to say, okay, we want to kill paedophiles and mass murderers. I'm no longer of the view that we have the death penalty. Why? Because of this. because I believe that we will be pushed by our government into a situation where memes like this and statements like that could potentially have the death penalty attached to it. And we give the state the opportunity of being able to extend it. I don't trust them. That's the problem. I don't trust the state not to extend it to views of our side.
Just to be clear, were all these cases, because I know that in the case of the Southport mass arrests, there were the turbo courts, weren't there?
Yes.
All of those cases just had a judge. There was no jury. Is that right? That they just sped them through?
They sped them through the magistrates' courts, and where all the offences were technically either way, which meant you could be tried in a magistrate court or a Crown court. The solicitors who were acting on behalf of the defendants all said, stay in the magistrate's court because it's a lower sentence, and plead guilty because you will get a softening of that sentence. Where those people ignored that advice and said, no, I'm going to the Crown Court, most of them, I think statistically, have actually been acquitted. Whereas in the magistrate's court, it's then decided by either a single judge or it was a trio of judges. But most of them, as I understand, were actually dealt with by a single judge very quickly.
So anyway, moving on. The Trump administration is not taking this lightly, and they're not standing down on this. So recently, they sent a 5-person team from the US State Department to come over to the United Kingdom and interview campaigners to give the feedback to the White House. They met with 5 activists in the UK who'd been arrested for silently protesting outside of abortion clinics. And the diplomats from the US Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labour travelled to London in March in an effort to affirm the importance of freedom of expression in the UK and across Europe. They were led by Samuel Sampson, a senior advisor to the State Department, and met with officials from the Foreign Office and challenged Ofcom on the Online Safety Act, which was also a point of contention in the White House. So they're taking this very, very seriously. They're paying a lot of attention, and they're not happy with what they see. And to be honest with you, it's hard to feel that they're in the wrong with this. It's hard to think that anyone could really summon up a proper argument for you posted a meme of a swastika pride flag on Twitter, and now you're under arrest. Right? How do you sum up a proper argument for you made someone feel anxious?
To me, thinking politically, especially given what we're going to discuss and where Starmer's gone with the Islands of Strangers speech, to me, this would just be such a quick and easy win for the government to just say, look, we've got this wrong. Things have got too far. Trump has got a point. We are the original democracy, blah, 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 the oldest parliament. From now on, and they could easily pass, the Free Speech Act or something.
Well, all they need to do is actually repeal some of the amendments to the original Public Order Acts and several of them, and it's a repealing, and actually the repealing would be much more significant than passing a new act, because what it would say is that we're making a break with those pieces of legislation that have damaged the concept of freedom of speech in this country. We've listened, we've understood, they'll be deleted. And that would be much more significant, because then it would also have an impact in the courts.
And what that would do is take away the power of the little petty bully police officer who's like, right, I've got them under various amendments of some obscure nonsense act that was passed in 2007 or whatever it is. It would just remove all of that.
Yes.
So that would all go away, stripping the power from them. So rather than, like you say, creating new legislation. But anyway, so they met them, the Telegraph found out about it. And, of course, various Trump allies, such as Charlie Kirk, have been raising the issue of Lucy Connolly. And a State Department spokesman has said the UK-US relations share a mutual respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. However, as President Vance said, we're very concerned about freedom of expression in the UK. And it's important that the UK respects and protects freedom of expression. And the thing is, ultimately now, we don't view expression as a human right. We view expression as the source of danger, and that is fundamentally the opposite opinion that the United States have. They view that the freedom of expression of an individual is a source of liberty, not the source of oppression. It's a much longer conversation to go into with that, which I won't do now. But the next thing and the final thing is Marco Rubio coming out strong again. And I just love the rhetoric that he's using at this point, where he's like, look, if a foreign government threatens to censor tech platforms, we're going to start coming after you. We are going to make sure you don't do this to us. And it's very much couched in the language of the American birthright. And I absolutely adore this. Listen to this. He says, for too long, Americans have been fined, harassed, and even charged by foreign authorities for exercising their free speech rights. Today, I am announcing a new visa restriction policy that will apply to foreign officials and persons who are complicit in censoring Americans. I hope you're listening to this, Keir. I know you were thinking, can we just go after Twitter? Can we ban Twitter? Didn't you summon someone, in fact, recently? Didn't they summon Elon Musk or someone like that? There was, you know,
They did. They did.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
and he ignored them.
Of course, he ignored them. But the point is, you know, who do you think you are? Is that what the question he's asking? Free speech is essential to the American way of life, a birthright over which foreign governments have no authority. And he also criticised the efforts of foreign governments to censor tech platforms. He says, it's unacceptable for foreign officials to issue or threaten arrest warrants on US citizens or US residents for social media posts on American platforms while physically present in US soil. It's similarly unacceptable for foreign officials to demand that American tech platforms adopt global content moderation policies or engage in censorship activity that reaches beyond their authority and into the United States. Whether in Latin America, Europe, or elsewhere, the days of passive treatment for those who work to undermine the rights of Americans are over. I mean, that is bloody strong, and must have put the wind up our establishment in particular, in addition to the European establishment.
Well, I hope so, because I got a message yesterday saying that a team of people of the US had actually been in contact also with Ofcom Watch,
what I read about it,
who are taking the challenge on behalf of organisations like Gab up against, in a judicial review in a High Court trial, against Ofcom for the way that they're looking at these rules. And the message was that the US admin is about to impose phase 1 travel sanctions against British government officials involved in censorship of US technology companies. And I asked, so who was top of the list? And he went, Dame Melanie Dawes, the chief executive of Ofcom. Now, that may have been tongue-in-cheek.
Sure, but you never know.
But you never know. But wouldn't that be a delight if you turned around and said, I'm sorry, Dame, you're no longer welcome in the United States and you'll never be allowed to use dollars or any banking facilities again because we put sanctions on you, which means you won't be able to travel in many countries in the world and won't be able to use a lot of the financial markets.
It could be a bizarre scenario when they really start looking into Ofcom, that it leads back to Peter Mandelson, who was currently the US ambassador.
Yeah.
Like, Peter Mandelson gets hit with the sanction because he said he was instrumental in setting up Ofcom.
Yeah, absolutely.
The point being, I didn't get to vote for Trump, but if I had, this would be exactly what I was voting for. So I hope you Americans are very happy with what they're doing, because I bloody am.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.